thanks everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Bully Resistance Show. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that there's two ways that you can actually help me continue the fight against bullying in the public schools. First, if you haven't subscribed to the Bully Resistance Show, it doesn't cost you anything. All you have to do is go to my website at www.davebond.org, and you'll see the banners that says subscribe to the Bully Resistance Show. So all you have to do is either click on the Android or on the iPhone, and you can subscribe. The only thing that you're going to get when a new show comes out is just a notice letting you know there's a new show that you can listen to, and that's it. Anyway, the second way that you can help, you can be a monthly supporter as low as $4 per month, and in return, you can receive either a digital download track of the week or a digital download CD of the month. At least this way, you feel like you're just not giving money away. You're at least getting something in return. But all you have to do on that is just go to my website, www.davebond.org, scroll down and click on the Patreon banner, and then you can get some more information that way. The Bully Resistance Show is brought to you by Parkersburg Jiu-Jitsu, a Pedro Sauer affiliated located in Vienna, West Virginia. For more information, go to parkersburgbjj.com, or you can call 740-591-2706. So you can either go to the website, or you can actually call the number, like I said, 740-591-2706. And if you mention the Bully Resistance Show, you can receive 2 free week training in self-defense and also a private lesson with an instructor. Of course, restrictions do apply. We don't want a family of 15 coming in there and expect, 15 private lessons. The Bully Resistance Show is brought to you by Planet Fitness, located in Parkersburg, West Virginia, and Marietta, Ohio. They strive to create a workout environment where everyone feels accepted and respected, wouldn't you? But anyway, that's why Planet Fitness in Parkersburg and Marietta, they take care to make sure their club is clean and welcoming and their staff is friendly. I mean, I know that by experience because I was a member there. But anyway, whether you're a first-time gym user or a fitness veteran, you'll always have a home in their judgment-free zone. So with no further ado, sit back and enjoy the next Bully Resistant Show.
Welcome, everyone, to the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells, nationally known smooth jazz artist, CEO and co-founder of the Chocolate Jazz Foundation, and the co-host of a 2-hour syndicated radio program called Chocolate Jazz Radio. Bully Resistance is a weekly 1-hour show that's a motivational, informative, and inspirational program. We will have interviews with musicians, actors, government officials, politicians, psychologists, counselors, and just average day citizens. Of course, the topics will include making right choices, never giving up desire, discipline, determination, bullying in public schools or workplace and in your community, bully resistance and prevention, self-defense, jiu-jitsu, and current affairs, and much, much more. And if you're ready, we are. Here's your host, David Wells.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells. My name is David, and today we have a special guest who is a full-time contemporary jazz guitarist based out of San Francisco, California. She was born into a musical family. She's released 8 solo albums. She was nominated for the Gavin Smooth Jazz Artist of the Year, named the Jazz Tracks Debut Artist of the Year, and was voted Best New Artist in the Smooth Jazz category of Jazz's Reader's Poll. Also, her first single, It's So Amazing, from her new CD, Living Out Loud, is hit number 1 on the contemporary jazz charts. Also, number 1 for the first month of on Amazon jazz bestseller. Also, number 1 on Amazon best-selling list, and number 1 most added contemporary jazz album on Billboard. So at this time, I want to introduce Joyce Cooling on the Bully Resistance Show. Joyce, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, David. Boy, I was like, who is he talking about?
Yeah, I know. This is you. Hey, before we
kind of, sorta.
Right. So, Joyce, before we get started, can you just give us a little bit more background of yourself, like where you're born and raised, and actually how you got started into music?
Well, I grew up on the East Coast, meaning the New York, New Jersey area, and we kind of toggled back and forth between those areas. My father changed jobs and that kind of thing. So that's where my growing up was. So there was a ton of jazz in Manhattan, and I just loved it. I don't know what it was. I just loved it, and I loved the whole Brazilian music thing.
Okay.
So I was always, even as a kid, way underage, I was in Manhattan at these clubs, and in Newark, New Jersey, there was a great organ trio place, and I'd just take the bus there, and, I wasn't supposed to be let in. They wouldn't serve me alcohol, but they let me in,
Right.
and I saw the great organ trios, John Patton and Jimmy McGriff and Jimmy Smith, and I already said Big John Patton. Who else did I always see? Oh, Groove Holmes, all those guys. So that was going on in Jersey, in Newark, at this place I used to go. And then in Manhattan, I saw all the straight-ahead jazz stuff. Everybody, David, everybody from Joe Henderson to everybody.
Right.
Ornette Coleman, and I'm stumbling on how many people, because it's just racing through my head how many people I saw. Everybody, Dexter Gordon, all the great piano. Oh, Cedar Walton, I used to love his band with Billy Higgins on drums, and I would just follow these guys. So I was like, a jazz groupie. Not of the people, of the music. I was a groupie of the music.
Right.
And then the Brazilian thing was happening. Ayrton and Flora came all the time, and, a new club opened, SOBs, down on 7th Ave, south of Market, or south of, I'm south of Market, I'm back in San Francisco.
Right.
7th Avenue South, yeah. And so I used to see, everybody there, a lot of great Brazilian artists, João Gilberto and Bolasecchi. I used to see, so it was really, Bolasecchi actually played a lot in San Francisco, so I continued when I got here. So I don't need to ramble on. You guys get it,
Right.
That was my thing. I was in love.
I'm familiar with your music in more contemporary jazz, smooth jazz. So did you ever get involved or play much of like bebop traditional jazz?
Live I did. I was a freelance person, and so I would play with various singers and other instrumentalists, and so I did that circuit.
Right.
And so you'd play through the jazz standards. It wasn't like I was some blazing bebop player. I don't want to mislead anybody.
Right.
But we played through a lot of the standards. The quote Great American Songbook, and
right. So how old were you when you actually started playing music? Was the guitar your first instrument, or was piano or voice or?
No. Well, David, those questions are always so hard for me because it just always was.
Right.
Always was, always will be. Music was everywhere. My mom was a huge music person, and actually she taught music in elementary school, and she also, went to College of Music, and her major was piano and her minor was cello, and so she, she turned me on to all the classical music,
right.
Bach and Brahms and Beethoven and all the heavies there. Stravinsky, right. That was a big one for her, and Rachmaninoff was a huge, love of hers, and the French. I like to call it French impressionistic music, even though the art came first. The Debussy and Ravel, and just the whole Euro impressionistic thing that was going on. She was way into that. So those were soundtracks of my childhood, and I love that. And believe it or not, opera. She would take us to the opera, kids, and of course, as kids, we made fun of her opera, How can you listen to that? They're just screaming, But it sunk in, it sunk in. We saw the best. It was at the Metropolitan Opera House, and we saw the best of the best, and it sunk in. Even though as a little kid, you don't quite get it or appreciate it. It lasted, and I love the opera today.
Did you?
Certain ones,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you want to, did you always want to have a career in music, or was it just dropped right on your lap?
No, it wasn't. I never thought about a career. It wasn't like, oh, hey, how can I go out and make a living at this? It just was a love.
Wow.
Just a deep, passionate love.
Right.
And so, the career thing was more of a practical thing later, you know? Like, I was working regular old kid jobs, I was waiting on tables, I was cleaning houses, I was doing whatever, working in little retail stores for minimum wage. I did that whole after-school jobs and all that, and raking leaves for neighbors, shoveling snow. And so as I got older, you got to pay the rent,
Sure.
So it became more of a practical thing, David. It wasn't like, I am going to grow up to be a musician. It was just fell in. Mm-hmm.
Right. I have been, full-time for about 18 years, and I'll never forget, several years ago, I remember following you, and you played. Matter of fact, I'm going to tell you this, Joyce. My bass player is probably going to kill me. We have a concert on this Christmas thing, but he is a huge fan of you, and and I'm thinking, oh gosh, so I'm going to be sending him this thing. But he was raised in. I'm not for sure what the connection was, but he was raised in New York City. His parents, both of his parents, were jazz artists. Full-time jazz artist, and then he moved to Miami, and he played with now he played with maybe once or twice, with Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. and everything else, and that's all he does, and he is a big follower of you. So I think that's a good a good thing. But let me ask you this, backing up a little bit. So what made you, I guess, move from the East Coast to the West Coast, or do you still have homes in both places?
Well, my family's still all back there. I'm the only little, offshoot that sprang out west. But, no, that's not true. I have a cousin in Colorado, that kind of thing. But
sure.
Of my immediate family, I was the only one. David, I wish I had some, really profound answer.
Right.
It was so, some friends were driving out west, and they stopped by my house and said, we're driving to California. You want to go? And so I kind of looked up and I went, yeah, I think I do. Give me a minute. So went and threw a bunch of stuff in a paper bag, jumped in the back of a Land Cruise, a Land Rover. No, wait, what was it? What were those Jeeps back then? Land Cruiser, I think.
Okay.
I think it was a Land. It doesn't matter. But, and off we went. So it wasn't some thought out, I feel a calling for the West Coast. It was none of that. It was just, hey, let's go check it out. Let's see what's going on.
Sure.
And came to the Bay Area. And then, and it wasn't like, and I stayed here ever since. It wasn't like that. It was, I ping-ponged back and forth. I kind of used that expression several times. A lot of my life has been toggle switches.
Right.
Off on, here, there.
Right.
So I would bounce back and forth, East Coast, West Coast, East Coast, West Coast. And then finally I said, well, I think I didn't even say that. I just stayed.
Right.
As you can tell, I'm not a very thought out person. I wouldn't think. It just kind of, I just go with what's going on, and then one day I just stayed with my stuff. I just stayed out here. But I visited and still do all the time. But
of all places, Joyce, San Francisco, isn't the cost of living, horrendous?
Well, when I first came here, it was nothing like it is now. To move here now, forget it.
Yeah.
Forget it. And you know what, David? It's stupid.
Right.
It's stupid. It's in a weird little bubble right now with the whole tech thing. And this too shall pass. This bubble will burst, and then it'll become normal again. It just got crazy.
Right. Well,
I was here way before the tech thing. Yeah, go ahead.
I have. I mean, there's friends that I know that live in California, and some of them have drizzled to Nashville, and I about a year and a half ago, I promoted the Nashville Urban Jazz Festival several times downtown, and I was actually raised in Dallas, Texas, and went to middle school and high school, and I went to a university in Tulsa, and but I was always, I was talking with Dave Cause, and he tells me about his ability. He goes, you know what? There's so many saxophone players that are so much better than me, but he loves the business side of it also. And that's why he goes so with the cruises and the touring and just different. He gets his
hands
at
it.
Right.
He's great at it.
Yeah. And I barely get by as a musician, but I do enjoy promoting the wine festivals and the jazz festivals and bringing all the food vendors together and just spend a couple of days there. And it was really it's a good thing, but.
That's so cool, David.
Yeah.
That's really that's an awesome thing. And music and things in general need everybody. They need people coming at it, especially anything in the arts, from all angles.
Right.
So it's like, bring it on. Whatever your involvement, whatever enjoyment in whatever involvement floats your boat, man, it's needed. Everybody needs it. And so we all sort of feed on each other and make the arts work.
Right.
Without this plethora of people doing different things, it just wouldn't happen.
Sure.
If everybody just wanted to close their bedroom door and play to themselves,
right.
I mean, it wouldn't happen.
Right. I want to back up into the school days when you were, I don't know, you're probably living in the East Coast. I was just thinking it's funny that after so many years, we remember certain things that have happened to us when we were in school. I mean, the good and bad. And first, if anyone knows me, I want them to know that I have the utmost respect for teachers and principals. And
me too.
I've talked with them, and I know what they go through dealing with kids. But that being said, there's been a few times over the 18 years that I've traveled where people would come up to me and they would say, I wanted to play this instrument or I wanted to play that instrument, and for some reason my band teacher said, no, we don't want you to play that, or no, you just don't have the bill for that, play this, but anyway, I remember, and I'm leading up to a question I want to ask you, but I remember a time in college, this is my first year of college, and I was auditioning for different scholarships and everything else, and they told me, okay, well, you gotta, my degree was in performance, but they said you need a minor. So I'm thinking, okay, well, what is that? They go, well, can you play the piano or can you sing? And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe I should sing. So I set up an appointment with a vocal teacher, and then it was seconds into the warm up, and she stopped and she said, well, maybe this is not going to be your cup of tea, So, and I'm thinking, okay, because the reason why I was shocked, because I'm in a family of 7 brothers and sisters.
Mean. That's so mean.
I know, but in a large family, all my brothers and sisters sang, and they sang really great. Anyway, the reason why I'm mentioning this, I read that when you were going to school, you were left-handed, but your teacher insisted that you use your right hand to write. So in doing that, did that affect you in school in any way?
Yeah, it really did. It really did. My mom's left-handed. Come on, it's genetic, but it wasn't a great school system. It was, and my mom wasn't even aware of this. She was. I come from a family of school teachers. Both my parents were school teachers, and she was so busy raising kids and holding down a full-time job and then some and a second job, and they were both going for their masters, and so they were doing night school, and my parents worked hard. Oh, my God, they worked hard. And And my dad even at one point had 3 jobs trying to get his doctorate, and so I throw down for him. But so she wasn't even aware that this was going on. But I read my mom in one of her school papers, like for her master's degree.
Right.
She had to do a section on child psychology, and I don't know the exact, whatever. But there was this paper she did, so she chose me to like interview me for this certain little thing, and it was a fill in the blank thing. Like, I'm making this up. Like, I am happiest when I blank, and then the kid fills in the word, or I do best when I blank, right?
Right.
And I saw this thing that my mom wrote, and about 4 of those, and maybe there were, 25 or 30 little questions, in this little thing for her master's. And about 4 or 5 of them, David, were, I will try blank to hold my pencil right. I am best when I'm holding my pencil right. The whole
Yeah, geez.
the whole writing thing came up quite a few times. And now, it did, well, I'm going to jump back a little bit.
Sure.
But it did create like a dyslexia. And to this day, David, I don't read music. I don't do it well. I don't read notes. You're going to laugh, but I have to count. Every good boy does. D, that's a D,
way.
It's bad. It's bad. Chord charts, for some reason, just like fake book charts,
Sure.
or jazz chord charts, those I could get through. I was never great, but I could get through those. But actual reading, and in math, it's funny, I grasped concepts, like I did okay in algebra. Geometry I did well in, it was spatial, and I could see the shapes and all that. But arithmetic, like counting, adding, subtracting, dividing, I couldn't do it. And I still, to this day, I count on my fingers, and numbers I reverse numbers, and when I say right, I mean left. And sometimes I'll find myself stuttering a little bit, like when I go to open a door, and I don't know whether to use my right or my left.
Right.
So that's the downside. But, lemonade, got to make lemonade.
Right.
So I think the good side is that maybe, I'm hoping, David, I don't really know, but maybe that both sides of the brain are exercised a little bit for me, jumping back. Again, the toggling theme.
Sure.
We're back to the toggling mantra. I'm toggling left brain, right brain, left
this
brain,
is great.
right.
Hey, well, let me ask you this. So, since we're in the subject of school, so being raised in New Jersey or New York, so what do you know of, your experience in going to school? Do you remember, was it a good experience, bad experience? Did you get bullied? Did you see people getting bullied? What was your overall experience in going to school?
I saw people being bullied, and I'm not proud of this, David. I'm not proud. I didn't jump in to stand up for them.
Right.
I didn't do it.
Right.
I didn't do it. I sort of shrank back. I wasn't a super outgoing kid, but I was so. I would call myself just so mediocre. I was just medium. I wasn't popular. I wasn't hated. I wasn't this. I wasn't that. I always kind of coasted in the middle, right?
Right.
And so when I did see kids being bullied, and I was not the bullier,
right? The
bullying person. I never did that, but I didn't jump into the rescue.
Joyce,
I didn't.
A couple things, and I've shared.
Not proud of that.
Yeah, I understand. I've shared this to several. On several episodes. 85. It's said that 85% of all the bullying that takes place, there's no intervention. Now,
awful.
Yeah. Well, what I thought when I first saw that, I'm thinking, okay, well, obviously, the parents aren't, stepping in. The teachers aren't doing anything about it. But what we're finding out is that the kids that are getting bullied, they're keeping it to themselves. And
they are.
Yeah, and also the kids that actually witness bullying happening, they're not doing anything about it. Now, here's my take. There's so many situations when, and you hear about this, when you're in a situation that's really dramatic or something, you sort of just stand still, you don't say anything or do anything, and then when you walk away, a few minutes later, you're thinking, maybe I should have said this, or maybe I should have done that. And I honestly think that when kids witness being bullied, it happens so fast. I know that they don't. It makes them feel uncomfortable, but they just are just frozen. And to lead me to this, me being raised in a large family, I was second to the youngest, and there's several reasons why kids get bullied. But being second to the youngest, I was bullied, but also I bullied kids, and the reason why is because I was the youngest.
Yeah, your pecking order there. You had a whole bunch of siblings ahead of you, always picking on you. Yeah, I get it.
And so, anyway,
the bullied become the bulliers.
Yeah, and that's what leads me to this question. A few days ago, I was reading what your thoughts were about bullying, and you said something like that bully is like a serious psychoemotive and spiritual pain. It is. Yeah, so explain what you mean by that.
Well, I think that someone who bullies or who, who, especially, if they take it to, even verbal.
Sure.
Someone who does that is not a secure, happy, confident, self-confidence, inner peace. They're not coming from that kind of place. They're coming from a place of turmoil, probably huge feelings of inadequacy, depending on how far they take it. It's not a healthy place to be coming from.
Right.
It's a place of pain. They're coming from hurt and a lot of personal anxiety or spiritual pain or psychoemotive pain. Or
sure.
It's not. You don't bully someone from a place of health. So, as I get older, at first you all like hate the bully. You hate the bully.
Right.
What a rotten kid. But then when you look, start peeling the layers back, that kid's in trouble. That kid's in trouble too.
Yeah.
What he's doing, I'm not condoning, but that kid's in trouble, needs help.
Right.
And I remember one time, I take that back. One time I did do something about bullying.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't stand up to the kid, but I told my mom. And my mom, for a while, my mom taught in a school that I attended,
mm-hmm.
an elementary school, just briefly. And so she could do something about it. And when I told her, she took care of it. But it was real cool the way Mom's handled it. She didn't take the bully aside and go, "You never do that to another kid again," and chew him out.
Sure.
She spoke to the school counselor, to the parents, to see what was at the bottom of this angst and this anger in this kid who felt that he needed to take it out on other kids, and at the same time, the other kid got counseling too, the one being bullied, because that's just horrible.
Right.
And I have a really sad thing to say.
Right.
And that is one of the kids that got bullied a lot. I liked him. a lot. He was really smart. Really smart. My mom said, in 30 years, 35 years of teaching, everyone thought that their kids were gifted. She heard that all the time. My kid's gifted, should be in the gifted class. And she said, they were smart. She said, gifted, she kind of saved that for a couple.
Right.
And she said, in all my years of teaching, I only came across 2 truly gifted, what I would call genius in what they did. She didn't like that word genius because everybody's a genius in something and not a genius in other things. But
sure.
But she said, I'm getting slightly sidetracked, but this is back to the bullying thing and how serious it can be. And he was also, as he got older, he discovered that he was gay.
Mm-hmm.
But as a kid, you're still gay, or at least he was.
Sure.
And so kids would tease him, and they didn't want to, oh, you throw like a girl, out on the baseball field, and horrible stuff. And he was so smart, I mean, like in literature and English and history. I mean, he was brilliant, my mom said.
Right.
That he kind of went through, he would just turn the other cheek and get bullied and picked on and sometimes beat up and all this. And when he became a teenager, I don't know what it was, that combined with, I don't know, he committed suicide.
Oh, my God.
So, I know, it's like bringing me to tears thinking about it. I really liked him.
Mm-hmm.
And he, you know, the severity of it, you got to step up. Even if you don't want to, like, get in the middle of a fight and get a black eye yourself, you got to tell somebody, or, you know.
Right.
I would encourage people to do that. Yeah.
You know, I'm referring back to Dave Cause, and he was telling me his stories about he was being bullied, and he would be walking down the hallway, and out of nowhere, he would wake up in the hallway with his face on the ground where somebody would just cold cock him. And you know, and this is when he was going through that stage in life, you know.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and then I'm thinking about, Joyce, you know, January last year, from January 2018 to the end of the school year, we remember 2 or 3 major gun shootings on school property. Well,
that's right.
What a lot of people don't know, there was over 100 school shootings, and I'm thinking, I'm sort of curious on, you know, how many of those kids were bullied, and you know,
or were bullies themselves, coming from that severe seething anger that they didn't know what to do with.
Right. And also then you have a connection. Well, was there some type of mental disorder? And I was finding out that, you know, 1 out of 5 adults has some kind of mental disorder. I mean, that is a lot of people.
That's true, David.
Right. And so
1 in 4 families has a direct person struggling with diagnosable mental illness. Okay, let me ask you this. And I know that you're an advocate. I don't want to go into too much detail. I know that you're an advocate of the NAMI, which is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. And one of the reasons why is because your brother was dealing with as a schizophrenia, right? Mm-hmm. He still is. Okay, mm-hmm. So what was life like being raised in a home with somebody like that? Was it I mean, what were some of the symptoms that he went through? I mean, how did you guys deal with it, and you know, to have a normal life? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, he was kind of textbook schizophrenia development. Like, you know, it developed in his, you know, late teens, early 20s. But before that, a very serious heroin addict, you know, living on the streets in Harlem, carrying guns, and, you know, very severe drug addict, and always had drug problems, never made it through high school, you know, that kind of thing. And he was a quiet kid. He was not bullied. Right. He was liked. I mean, he was, in a way, for some kids, he was kind of cool because he was, you know, what kids mistakenly think is cool. You know, he was sort of a rebel. He had a motorcycle, and he was into music and played in a band and da-da-da-da-da. Sure. And then the drug use escalated and escalated until it got so serious. I mean, the heroin addiction was not light at all, if there is such a thing. And all his friends, and he spent time in jail, and, you know, he was incarcerated. Yeah. So it was a mess. And I remember his breakdown. They call it, you know, his psychotic break, and it was strange, and I didn't understand it. And back then, you know, mental illness was not talked about very much. Right, I know. You know. And it was like a taboo. And the word schizophrenia, you know, called up visions of the 3 Faces of Eve, you know, that movie, and, you know, Psycho, and, you know, all this kind of Hollywood interpretation of mental illness. And so, and there were times, I have to admit, David, it was a little scary. I remember one time he was downstairs, and I heard a lot of different really strange voices coming from him. He's flipping back and forth. He's having a psychotic episode. Right. And I called him, and I said, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And then he'd call back in his own voice, and then go back into these and when he finally came upstairs, he was so red in the face, and he was like sort of frothing a little bit. He was so. And was I scared? Yeah, I was. I was, and I was his sister. And I remember one other time that I am not proud of at all. Not proud of at all.
Right.
Today I'd never do that, but there was a time when he'd go through stuff. He definitely had psychotic delusions, and he would, be talking to himself and all that stuff and laughing to himself and sort of inappropriate behavior.
Right.
And there were people over, like some of my friends and stuff, and he was kind of acting inappropriately.
Right.
And I remember being so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed of him. So, again, I am not proud of that.
Right.
But you're with your friends, and you want your friends to think,
Sure.
you want to impress your friends, and they're over and you're playing records, and your brother's acting, like, really strangely,
Mm-hmm.
So, I was, the way I look at it, David, if he was my beloved brother, loved him dearly, it was like we were very close, still are.
Right.
If I didn't understand and I was embarrassed of him, how do you expect the general public to accept and understand mental illness? I was a sister, and I didn't even quite get the reaches of it. So, I think there's a lot of education that has been going on, but I think a lot more needs to go on to educate people about mental illness and what people go through, and so anyway, and true, the meds are much better now. Back then it was like Haldol, these old antipsychotic medications, which are still used today, but they have much more designer drug approaches to things, and he's doing way better today than he was back then. It was all breaking, and no one knew what was going on, and what is this, and why is he acting so weird, and there just wasn't a lot of stuff about it. We didn't even know about NAMI. We didn't know where to turn, and finally we did. Someone told us about NAMI, and we would have meetings in our house, and sometimes there were a lot of mentally people struggling with mental illness that we'd have around our dining table. And was it uncomfortable for me growing up? Yeah. Again, not proud of that. But it was.
Right.
It was. Well, now I'm thankful for the exposure. I'm sorry that it had to be at my brother's expense, but I'm thankful for that, that my mom embraced the whole thing.
Hey, Joyce, let me... I wish we had more time, but what I want to do...
Oh, geez, Louise. I rambled. Look at the time.
This is good. Before we go any further, I want to take a few minutes. I want to take a listen to your single, It's So Amazing, and I have a few questions to ask you after that, okay?
Sure. Back on music.
Sounds good. You know, Joyce, tell me actually who was involved in writing and producing It's So Amazing. Did you do most of the writing on that song?
Jay and I are co-writers.
Okay.
We co-write everything. And so that's kind of how it's always been. Jay did the production, and he just slammed it. Jay is so talented. Oh, my God. He's so talented. You know, I always have my input for sure, but I'll tell you, Jay, he produced.
How long have you guys been working together?
Oh, my God. Jeez.
I shouldn't ask that.
No, I'm struggling. Again, you know that bit with the dyslexia and numbers? I never remember how long things are. Like, I can't tell you dates and names and all that.
Sounds
I just
like
can't
me.
do it. Like decades, a long time.
Okay.
You know, since the 80s.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. You know, that single, if the listeners are just now tuning in or they missed the introduction, that single was hitting number one on all the jazz charts. It was most added single and everything else. So it's been extremely successful. But let me ask you this. Why did you pick It's So Amazing as the first single versus another single?
Well, you know, it was uplifting or hopefully uplifting.
Right.
I don't know if it will be for other folks, but we were hoping it was uplifting. And you know, we've been gone for 10 years, and we're thinking, well, how do we step back in, you know, with what song? And also Bud Harner, who's did radio for us, he immediately suggested that one.
Okay.
And, you know, we're not the business type, so we said, yeah, you know, let's go with that. And the title, It's So Amazing. Well, it's so amazing that we're back into music, and, you know, there was a lot of time, you know, parents getting older, taking care of parents and things like that, where we had to kind of back off the music thing. So the whole thing was, well, it's so amazing to be back. So, for lack of a better explanation, that's it.
So, because that's why I was sort of curious. I wasn't going to ask anything, but because you were doing so well. I mean, you were touring, you were going into the festivals, your song was always on the radio, and then all of a sudden, you weren't there. And then all of a sudden, you know, and then a few years went by. So I was sort of curious on what happened if you got really involved, maybe in a nonprofit, or if you're doing something different. So really, the reason why you guys took a break is because you had to, because of the family matters at home.
Taking care of family, yeah. And you know, and it kind of I always say this. We've all been there. Everyone I talk to, either they're going through it, have gone through it, or they're about to go through it. And it's sort of, you know, when one family member, you know, gets ill and passes on, you know, then it's sort of, well, then the next one and the next one. So it was a series of that, and I wouldn't have changed it. You know, I would have hung in there just the same. But, you know, you can't be touring and being sole caretaker for people. You can't, you know, it just doesn't work. Or canceling on promoters. You can't cancel.
Right.
So
well,
that's
you know,
what we were doing. Yeah.
What we usually do, at the end of an interview, we ask what we call super questions. And you just you can just answer these questions, you know, the best you can. And if that's all right, are we ready to do this?
Far away.
Okay. What's one word that best describes you?
Oh, David, I'm so bad at these. I don't know.
You don't?
I don't know. Optimistic.
See that? Now, see, that's good. Okay.
Optimistic, maybe. I'm a moment.
Let me ask you this. Now, what is one of your biggest pet peeves? Now, this could be at home. This could be on the road with your band. This could be anything. What's one of your biggest pet peeves, something that really bothers you the most?
You know, David, I'm not skirting the question. I'm really not. One of my goals is to not have any pet peeves. I'm working to eliminate those, and I've done pretty well. They're not all gone, but, you know, I'd say that has really softened. I don't want to have a pet peeve controlling me.
You know, I think when you get into I wonder if the East Coast, I think in New York, I think they had the same mentality. It's just like, not too many things bother you. But then you get into some of the conservative states and everything else, and it seems like everything bothers you. Okay.
I never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
This to me is on a very personal level.
Okay.
I don't want knee-jerk reactions like those trigger points. It's you're not in control of yourself,
right.
And I don't want anything to be able to, someone to be able, not someone or something, to push a button in me and I react, push this button, Joyce reacts like this. I don't want that automaton sort of thing. So I'm really working hard to eliminate pet peeves. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does make sense.
Without sounding stupid.
No. Okay, here's another question.
Okay.
Let me see. What natural gift would you most like to possess? I know. These are, boy, you're really digging into the coffers here, huh? Let's see. Okay, let me ask you this.
I think being non-judgmental.
Awesome. Well, that's different.
Okay.
I think that's good. Yeah.
Okay. You like that one, huh?
Yeah, I do. I have to say I do. Okay, who is your favorite band?
Oh, Lord.
Besides David Wells.
That one, David, hands down, I can't do. Okay. Because I love music in all genres. Like anything well played, man, I am in.
Okay.
So I love so many musicians and so many bands in different genres that one I can't answer.
Okay. Let me see. Okay, how about this one? Tell me something true that almost nobody agrees with you on, besides pet peeves.
Something true
that almost nobody agrees with you on. I know these are pretty tough, aren't they?
Yeah, because I don't want to be flippant and just I want to give you a fair shake here. I'll take one more second, and then I know we've got to move on.
Something true that almost nobody agrees.
Okay, maybe that. Well, I don't want to sound esoteric here. I mean, I do embrace the esoteric, but I don't live there. Some goofy Northern Californian girl, California girl. That I think that we have more control over, and control not like rigid control, like I will control you,
Right.
But soft control, or we can steer our lives far more than we think.
Nice.
And I know a lot of people go, well, no, this happened, but I don't, I think we have more of a rudder, control over the rudder of our lives, let's put it that way, right, than most of my friends think.
Sounds
How's
good.
That?
That sounds good. Joyce, before we wrap things up, can you just let everyone know how and or where they can listen to your music and stay actually updated in what you're working on?
Sure. Let's see, guys. There's Facebook. There's Instagram. We have our website.
Is it just Joyce Cooling?
www.joycecooling.com.
Okay.
Simple. Really, guys, all the usual suspects, all the usual places.
Okay. So the website, will that direct them to the Facebook, Instagram, Twitter?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, that's about all we have for the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells. Before we go, again, I want to thank all the sponsors for supporting the Bully Resistance Show. Also, I want to encourage all the listeners to go on my website at www.davebond.org and subscribe if you haven't yet to the Bully Resistance Show. So until next time, thanks for listening.